Hi, I'm Abby. I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the series where once a week I sit down and just talk about a classic album I love. If 20-minute episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, both here on my channel and over on my Instagram. Making a quick announcement before we get this week's episode rolling, my Q&A post to celebrate hitting 10,000 subscribers is up on my community tab now. You'll have until Wednesday. I'll be filming that video over the weekend, and you'll be seeing it next week. Thank you so much for your patience. I also realize we've blown past 10,000 subscribers really quickly, and that's kind of making me nervous. This is all moving a little faster than I can keep up with, so please bear with me. My Q&A video will be up next week, and go ask your questions over on that community tab post. If you ask them in these comments, I will not answer them. Now that that announcement is over and done with, this week's album is Crosby, Stills, and Nash, also colloquially known as the Couch Album. Congrats to those who guessed this one. If you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's, again, where the Q&A post is, and that's also where we play a little game of guessing what album I'm gonna cover next. Alright, let's take the plastic off. So my copy is a repress. I picked this up from one of my local record stores. They have amazing prices on their used vinyl. I would go with my best friend from high school, and on this trip, I think I bought 10 albums for like 50 bucks. Wild. Now this might be one of my favorite cover art stories I have ever told on a Vinyl Monday. I heard this from the Laurel Canyon documentary released about 3 years ago now. This cover was photographed by Henry Diltz, who just happened upon a rundown house with a brown couch on a little front porch. The guys all dressed in their matching brown and denim and took a few photos, with Dallas Taylor peeking through the door on the back cover. Looking through the proofs, the guys decided on this shot, with Nash sitting on the back of the couch, Stills in the middle with his guitar, and Crosby on the end. There was just one problem. The guys were sitting in reverse order to the CSN name. They considered just mirroring the shot, but then Stills would be holding his guitar in the wrong hand, and he was not having that. So they went back the next day, same clothes and all, to retake this exact photo, just with C and N in the right spots. They go back to find not only the couch, but the entire house is just gone? So they had no choice but to use this shot with the guys in the wrong order, but I guess it didn't matter that C and N were in the wrong spots because it's an iconic photo anyway. A current singer-songwriter supergroup boy genius replicated this shot for their self-titled EP. Looking at the gatefold, we have CSN standing in the right order this time, all bundled up in their fur coats. It looks like this was taken somewhere in the canyon at sunrise. And we also have, I totally forgot this was in here until this morning, your insert with the track listing, some liner notes, and all your lyrics for all the songs. On the Couch album, of course, we have CSN, David Crosby on vocals and guitar, Stephen Stills on vocals, guitar, and pretty much every other instrument besides the drums, but we're getting there soon, and Graham Nash on vocals and guitar. We have some special guests on this album. Dallas Taylor in the door plays the drums on all of these songs except for Marrakesh Express. Taylor couldn't make it to the studio that day, so that song was covered by Jim Gordon. We also have Cass Elliot of the Mamas and the Papas appearing on this thing. The only member of the Mamas and the Papas I find remotely tolerable. She does the backing vocals on Pre-Down Roads. We also have this trend of citing your spiritual advisor on your record in the 60s. Jefferson Airplane did it with Jerry Garcia on Surrealistic Pillow, and CSN does it on this one with Ahmet Ertegun. This album was produced by CSN themselves and engineered by Bill Halverson. Roll transition. So CSN starts with all of these guys' respective groups. I'll begin with the C in CSN, David Crosby of the Byrds. He was no doubt one of the founding fathers of folk rock. The Byrds' recording of Mr. Tambourine Man is what put Laurel Canyon on the map in the first place. He's got a complicated legacy for sure, but I remember him for his work in the Byrds and showing superhuman strength recording both Deja Vu and his debut solo album in the wake of unspeakable personal tragedy. For better or for worse, this man was made of iron and steel. On to why David left the Byrds. Well, it seems he was the problem. Look, as monolithic as Cros is in the history of folk rock, he was famously difficult to work with. Personally, professionally, it's not a far cry to say this guy could be a real asshole when he wanted to be. So he didn't leave the Byrds so much as he was kicked out in '67 for being unreasonably difficult. As the man himself stated in the Echo in the Canyon doc, "They threw me out of the Byrds because I was an a-hole." Say what you will about him, but hey, at least he was honest. Next, formerly of Buffalo Springfield, Peter Tork's roommate, the snaggletooth cutie, Stephen Stills. There is a universe in which Stephen Stills was a monkey, and this album is called Crosby, Tork, and Nash. I love it. Listen to For What It's Worth, Sit Down, I Think I Love You, Uno Mundo, Questions / Carry On, and Rock and Roll Woman. Any number of Springfield songs, and you'll hear his distinct style, very dense vocal harmonies and intricate instrumentation that would become hallmarks for the Laurel Canyon folk sound. He's a unique case of the supergroup, as he was the only one who didn't leave his respective former group. Buffalo Springfield just kind of fell apart around him. Dewey Martin got busted for possession, partying with Eric Clapton. He gets deported back to Canada, and the other half of the Canadian Dream Team, Neil Young, leaves Buffalo Springfield. He feels his voice isn't adequately being heard. We should keep an eye on that Neil guy. Something tells me he's gonna be pretty important later. Last but most certainly not least, we have Graham Nash of the Hollies. I don't have a Hollies record to hold up here because Hollies records are kind of impossible to find in the United States for some reason. While the Hollies were content with making more poppy, single-oriented stuff, Graham longed for something different. He wanted to use that pop sensibility to create more album-oriented work. He'd become taken with the folk revival in the US, so he leaves for California, never to look back. Thoroughly relevant to the CSN dynamic at this time is Nash's muse, Canadian transplant folk darling Joni Mitchell, because she was discovered by David Crosby. He produced her first record, Song to a Seagull, and lobbied really hard to reprise to keep the record as pared down as possible. This would be so that her voice, her writing, and her unique playing style could shine. Joni and Crosby's relationship, working and personal, did not end well. They dated through the Song to a Seagull era, and Joni broke up with him in a song. Now, cheating on your rock star girlfriend is one thing that I absolutely do not condone, but cheating on your girlfriend who is also a rock star is another thing entirely. Cros played with fire, and he didn't just get burned, he got incinerated with that song about the Midway. Lesson learned, do not fuck with a Scorpio. Graham and Joni first meet after a Hollies show, and it's love at first sight. He writes about their first night together on this album, Lady of the Island. Meanwhile, there's serious trouble in paradise for Stephen Stills and his girl, singer Judy Collins. Judy was really struggling through 1969 with alcoholism and severe depression. She was going to therapy about 3 times a week, Tuesday mornings, Friday evenings, and Sunday afternoons. But Stephen was wary about her therapist. Apparently, the branch of therapy Judy opted for was a little cultish. I don't know specifics about this, but it seems that therapy advocated against long-term relationships. Now, I can imagine this would cause serious issues in a long-term relationship. I mean, you have the one person who is brave enough to seek help for their issues, but they're doing what they think is right, and maybe the other person is like, this therapy is taking advantage of you at your most vulnerable, and then person one is like, you're not accepting me getting help for myself, you should be supportive of me, and it could be a mess. Stills writes the first suite of what would become Judy Blue Eyes as a mutual breakup letter to her. But the song does a heel turn when they decide to get back together. This happened more than once with them. I'll break down this song later in the video, but You Don't Have to Cry No More is also about Stephen and Judy's on and off and on again and off again relationship. I wonder if he met Rita Coolidge through Jim Gordon. Things to think about. Crosby, Stills, and Nash's self-titled debut was recorded through February and March of 1969 at Wally Hayter's Studio 3 in LA. Partway through recording, it seems the guys didn't have anyone to call on to fill in the rest of their instrumentation. Either it was a busy week in Laurel Canyon, or the guys didn't have any favors to call in, I don't know what. But one night, Stills goes into the studio. He stays up all night and records every single instrumental part, besides the drums, by himself. He did it all in one night like Laurel Canyon Santa Claus. I don't know if it was literally all in one night, but the way the story is told in the Laurel Canyon doc makes it sound like it. Now, Cros did not take too kindly to Stills doing this. Having two big personalities in a group means there will be friction. You have Cros's attitude and Stills liking things done in a very specific way. The Greatest Offense was Long Time Gone. That was Crosby's song, and he felt he should at least be playing guitar on it. It seems a Cros guitar part was dubbed in somewhere along the way. He's not credited as a player on this release, but he is on later ones. Notable demos include Song with No Words, and the guys even ran through Harry Nilsson's Everybody's Talkin'. They also ran through a very different sounding version of Teach Your Children. I guess they had some bigger plans for that, but we're not quite there yet. We're still here. The track listing of Crosby, Stills, and Nash goes as follows. A quick interjection here. As I did for my Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young video, I'll color code these songs by who wrote them in the little text on the screen for you guys. White for Crosby, blue for Stills, and brown for Nash. Opening up side one, we have Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, followed by Marrakesh Express. Then Guinevere. Next, You Don't Have to Cry, and side one closes with Pre-Down Roads. Opening up side two, we have Wooden Ships, followed by Lady of the Island. Then Helplessly Hoping. Next, Long Time Gone, and the album closes with 49 Bye-Byes. That's all one track, by the way, not 49 separate ones. Not 49 Bye-Byes, just 49 Bye-Byes, the song. Okay. You may have noticed the asterisk next to Wooden Ships. That song was written by Crosby, Stills, and Paul Kantner of Jefferson Airplane. Crosby, Stills, and Nash was released in May of 1969. Rock music was going through a huge back-to-basics phase. Clapton had ditched Cream and was doing kind of a bluesy jazz thing with Blind Faith. Zeppelin, while still steeped in their post-Yardbird psych fuzz because were heavy in their blues era, and even the Beatles are running through their old material. Folk rock itself is splintering off into a ton of different directions. You have Bob Dylan going totally country with Nashville Skyline, and the band's Music from Big Pink was huge this year. Crosby's own former group, the Byrds, while briefly commandeered by rhinestone-suited cowboy Graham Parsons, totally embraced the country direction. This is that record, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, and this group would splinter off into a totally country rock group, the Flying Burrito Brothers. While folk and country are taking a stronghold in pop music thanks to the Laurel Canyon scene, it wasn't anything quite like this. These guys would be hailed as sort of the American equivalent to the Beatles. Sorry, monkeys. At least you have my bumper theme. CSN puts CSN on the map, arguably more than any of their previous groups had. Speaking of former groups, CSN piques the interest of Stills' ex-bandmate, Neil Young. He's just released Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere with his new group Crazy Horse. He's on a roll and he's seeking maybe to rock the boat. A good chunk of the CSN material debuted live with Neil Young in tow. This album was also one of the releases to put CSN's manager on the map, David Geffen. With Elliot Roberts, he'd go on to found Asylum Records in a couple years. They were the label of Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell, Linda Ronstadt, and Bob Dylan through his brief breakup with Columbia. This is Planet Waves, in my humble opinion, one of Dylan's most underrated releases. All of this, the eventual founding of Asylum Records, Neil Young's direction in the 70s, all of that came from this album. So, what do I think of CSN? Going in, I was only really familiar with the singles off this one, but very much familiar with Deja Vu from last year's Woodstock series. It's so rare that you get even two songwriters on par with each other in the same group. Even rarer that you get three of them. I can only think of two instances, really. The Beatles and CSN. So I was surprised to find that this is kind of a Stephen Stills show. Stills even said it himself in the 2008 CSN biography. This album was his baby. He sings lead or co-lead on 6 of the 10 songs, and he contributed half of them. This Stills & Co. approach, it seems, directly contributed to the more egalitarian track listing of Deja Vu. I really liked the approach to the Deja Vu track listing, but I gotta say, I'm not complaining about the overrepresentation of S. Have to expose my bias here. I am a Stephen Stills girly. Cross is my favorite voice on here, but Stills is my favorite writer, and the song that converted me was Judy Blue Eyes. The whole song is a back and forth from Stephen and Judy's points of view, and if you continue that duplicity into the second suite, movement, whatever you want to call it, you uncover some really intriguing double meanings. I've got an answer, I'm going to fly away. Could be Stephen saying, I'm flying out of here, I'm piecing out of this relationship, but it could also be Judy saying, I think I want to leave. Will you come see me Thursdays and Saturdays? Will you still come see me even if we aren't together? Would you come see me while I'm in treatment? Would you visit my grave? Through those lines in the song and others like it, I'm led to believe maybe Judy was struggling with suicidal thoughts along with alcoholism and depression. That could be just my own life experiences coloring this song. But this song is undoubtedly a cry for mercy from both sides. It's two people who need the other to be gentle with them, but they just might not know how. The alliteration through the third suite, Lacey lilting leery, losing love lamenting, it's subtle enough that you don't pick up on it unless you're really listening. It seems to be a device Stephen liked using, see Helplessly Hoping. And there's this hollow sound, the guitar tapping. I love when guitars are used as percussion, both rhythmically and physically. As for the last movement all in Spanish, Stephen tacked it onto the end because, well, the song's long enough. What's a couple more minutes? But all of these efforts of breaking up, making up, reaching out, closing off are futile because in the end, how can you catch the sparrow? Judy Blue Eyes is genius, and you won't fully understand that until you've lived it. Yeah, with an opener that strong, it's a little tough for the rest of the album to measure up. Still set the bar so high. I don't love Marrakesh Express. It's a little hokey, cutesy for my tastes. I'm not crazy about it, but I do love that rhythm section, that super hollowed out organ sound. While I was getting ready this morning, that's when I get a lot of my Vinyl Monday listening in, I had this revelation that Lady of the Island might not be the only Joni Mitchell-centric song on this record. Pay attention to references to golden hair, harbors, and seagulls on Guinevere. I think Joni partly inspired this one. I mean, Crosby did produce this record, song to a seagull. It's classic moody Crosby goodness, and it reminds me of what he'd do on Deja Vu. I love that totally psychedelic backtracking guitar on Pre-Down Roads. It's a breath of fresh air. And if you listen to the bass line through, I think it's the bridge, it calls back to the Judy Blue Eyes bass line. I like Wooden Ships better when Jefferson Airplane does it. Both versions have this underlying tension, but it actually comes to a resolve on the Airplane recordings. It's a perfect way for CSN and the Airplane to meet in the middle on a protest song. It's just raw and real enough for CSN, and just surreal, bizarre enough for Airplane. Purple Berries. The main guitar line and chord progression screams Cross, but the harmonies on the chorus line endings, By the Hand, Foreign Land, are totally Airplane. I can hear my brain autofilling Grace and Yorma's voices there. Lady of the Island. I had never heard this song before listening to this album for this video. I was walking my dog the other day about a stone's throw away from being back at home, and when this song came on, I stopped in front of my neighbor's house and just to take this song in. We just stood there until the song was over, only about a minute and a half. But it starts so abruptly on that second side of this record. Following Wooden Ships, you have to brace yourself for it. You don't have time to. A good few of Graham's most beautiful songs were about Joni, and this is one of them. It's tender, it's raw, it's a standout on CSN for how undone it is, next to how done up everything else is. This has Joni written all over it. The ad-libs sound just like hers, and I'm gonna spotlight a line here. I never want to finish what I've just begun with you. This line kills once you know how this ended. Though not on this album or Deja Vu, I do briefly want to shout out Graham and Joni's demo of Our House. I'm kind of devastated that it wasn't put on Spotify until right after my Deja Vu episode went up. Must have been. Yeah, between the Our House demo and Lady of the Island, wow. I really wish Graham and Joni had worked out. On to Helplessly Hoping, which might be the quintessential CSN song. The vocal blend CSN is known for is on full display here. It sounds so effortless, but in reality, when you've got 3 different voices, 3 different vocal ranges, and 2 different accents, remember, Graham is British, to blend that, in reality, it's extremely difficult. The layering of vocals through the chorus, 1 person, 2 alone, 3 together, it tells the story of the lyrics through the music itself. The end of Long Time Gone is so unexpected, the thing just kind of falls apart in your hands. And why does Cross sound like one of the 3 Dog Night guys on here? He doesn't quite sound like himself. No, actually, it sounds like he's doing his best John Mayall. I didn't know what to make of 49 Bye Byes at first, but I've grown to like it. It's the best usage of organ on the album. The way the guitar solo snakes in and out of the song, it's a triumphant end. Of the bonus tracks seen on expanded versions of CSN, like on Spotify, I really wish Do For The Others had made the cut. And hey, wouldn't you know it, it's a Stephen Stills song. And while admittedly half-baked and not suitable for the final track listing, the Freddie Neal tune, yes, that's what Graham calls Harry Nilsson, is a cute little outtake. I struggle to see CSN as a unified project the way I do Deja Vu. The voices are woven together expertly, but there are still some gaps in the blanket. Looking at this track listing, it reads like a greatest hits record. It's not unified in its eclecticism the way Deja Vu is, but damn, this is still stacked. Cross hasn't quite come out of his shell yet, but on CSN, Stills and Nash unwrap themselves to show the innermost workings of their lives and their hearts, the people they hold closest to them. It's an exercise in how their respective loves come together and fall apart with the backdrop of an artist's paradise, Laurel Canyon in the 60s. That in and of itself, backdropped by a crazy time in history, the 60s were bonkers! And to wrap all this up, Crosby, Stills, and Nash is a done-up and flourishing yet blisteringly raw and real cornucopia to cherish. My personal favorites on this one are Judy Blue Eyes, Guinevere, Pre-Down Roads, Lady of the Island, and Helplessly Hoping. If you want to keep up with all the faves from all the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that is it! That is Crosby, Stills, and Nash and the Couch album. What do you think of this one? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love. And if you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel to keep up with the next album I cover. Or is it? I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!